Hello, my name is Dr. Lauren Hammond Ford, and as an African American woman and a historian of the African diaspora in the Americas, I'm excited to partner with the YMCA on a discussion of allyship with the Black community this Black History Month. Carter G. Woodson is popularly known as the father of Black History Month. Born in 1875 in Buckingham County, Virginia, to formerly enslaved parents, Woodson rose to become a historian, educator, journalist, and activist. Educated at Berea College in Kentucky and the University of Chicago, Woodson went on to earn a Ph.D. in history at Harvard in 1912, making him the second African American after W.E.B. Du Bois to earn a doctorate from the institution. Discouraged by the discipline of history's traditional exclusion of Black people as historical actors in serious subjects of study, he went on to found the Association for the Study of Negro Life in History, now the Association for the Study of African American Life in History, or ASALH, in 1915. But did you know that Woodson, ASALH, and Black History Month all have a YMCA connection? In 1915, Woodson traveled to Chicago, Illinois to take part in the national celebration of the 50th anniversary of the ending of slavery in the United States. Inspired by this three-week celebration of African American achievements since 1865, Woodson met at the Wabash Avenue YMCA in Chicago with a small group and formed the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. This laid the foundation for what would be called Negro History and Literature Week, renamed Negro Achievement Week, then Negro History Week, and finally, Black History Month. In celebration of this connection and the YMCA's contemporary efforts to support Black Americans' efforts to achieve full citizenship, I'd like to talk to you today about allyship with the Black community. Allyship can be defined in a number of ways. In general, an ally is someone who makes the long-term commitment and effort to recognize their own privilege in relation to a marginalized group and takes action in solidarity with that group to remove barriers and close gaps in order to create a more just and equitable society. Importantly, an ally acknowledges publicly and privately what privilege or privileges they have. They focus on marginalized groups they are working in solidarity with and not on themselves. They respect the emotions and thoughts articulated by marginalized individuals and groups. They use their privileges on behalf of the marginalized community they seek to support, and they engage with others within their identity group regarding their privilege and how it has impacted the focus community. Now that we have a working definition of ally, let's talk about some practical ways that those seeking to be allies of the Black American community can begin their journey. I'd like to introduce you to what I like to call the 9 Ls of Allyship. Leave your presuppositions behind. When someone is looking to begin their work as an ally, it is important for them to have the willingness to leave behind the things that they think they know and the way that they think things should go. I would encourage allies to engage in a certain level of openness and humility because ally work is challenging in many ways. Learning to be an advocate or ally in doing the work is no different than learning how to be a great lawyer, a great teacher, or an engineer. Just as assumptions and reliance on previous knowledge in these fields can close opportunities and lead to harmful outcomes, the same thing can happen in ally work. Next, look at yourself. Modern American society values problem solving, productivity, and speed. This does little to encourage us to slow down and engage in self-reflection, which is critical for healthy growth. Those who want to be allies of the Black American community should look at themselves doing regular self-assessment about their own relationships with the complicated nature of race and racism in America. It is not as simple as am I or someone I know a racist, circle yes or no. In general, humanity is far too complex for that. First, most Americans would answer no. Second, prejudice of all types is subtle. Third, the tendency towards a binary option for these types of questions and a self-affirming answer means that few people will do the work required to combat the ways race and prejudice are embedded in American society at individual, institutional, and systemic levels in hidden ways. For example, someone might answer that they are not racist, yet construct a Black female coworker as domineering and constantly complaining and not think twice about it. That person may not do the internal work needed to ask themselves the more complex question, am I stereotyping this woman as a sapphire? The sapphire stereotype imagines Black women as angry, aggressive, and complaining. As a result, this person might simply dismiss their colleague instead of listening to their coworkers' concerns or feedback and thinking about how they might be addressed or incorporated. Learn. Set aside a portion of your time to invest in learning about the history, culture, and past and contemporary struggles of Black Americans independently. In our day, we expect quick answers delivered through Google search, a 10-minute TED Talk, or sound bites in the news. While these things may serve as helpful introductions or interesting provocations, real learning, the kind that is transformative, takes time. As a result, it is important to view learning about Black Americans as an investment. In addition, I encourage you to do the work of learning independently as opposed to looking to Black Americans to be personal tutors and teachers. Being on constant teaching mode can be exhausting and demoralizing for many Black Americans. We have provided a list of resources including documentaries, books, podcasts, and scholarly articles that you can start engaging on your own or with others who have a desire to be allies to the Black American community. Stream and discuss a documentary. Read and discuss a book or an article. Create a listserv for an article exchange. Loan or recommend a book to someone else. Invite a Black expert to share their knowledge and then give words and a gift of appreciation. Listen. Listen to Black people, male and female, old and young, liberal and conservative, and seriously consider what they have shared with you. Amongst some in the United States, there is a tendency to exclude or denigrate the relating of personal or collective experience, dismissing it as anecdotal in favor of quantitative evidence or statistics. There are at least 3 problems with this. First, personal and collective experience are a type of evidence, what we might call qualitative evidence. Second, the numbers are not as objective as some might like to think. Bias can creep in through the questions asked, the variables selected, and the ways in which results are then interpreted by researchers. Third, asking a Black American who has shared a personal or collective experience with you to prove what they are saying with statistics or facts communicates that the person and what they have shared matters less to you than the possibly biased numbers of a distant researcher and shuts down opportunities for future dialogue. Lament. Lament can be defined as a passionate expression of grief or sorrow or mourning, as in to mourn a loss or death. And anyone who has experienced a loss knows mourning is not a short-lived activity or something that you can quickly solve. The violence and injustices that Black Americans have suffered and endured are cause for mourning. A sense of this can be gathered in the musical tradition of Black Americans, particularly and fittingly in Black spirituals and the blues. Consider James Cleveland's song, I Don't Feel No Ways Tired, the chorus of which goes, nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe that he brought me this far to leave me. Or think about Billie Holiday's rendition of Strange Fruit as she sang, Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. In the United States, it is common to avoid uncomfortable emotions by rationalizing, escaping, ignoring, and rapid problem solving. Instead, I encourage those who want to be allies to sit with the discomfort, to lament, and let that be a touchstone that spurs individuals and groups to action. Next, don't look to lead. Question, evaluate, and support. Black Americans want allies and partners, not saviors and rivals. Realize that there is work that you can do on your own, but that when doing ally work, you are seeking to come alongside. With that in mind, ask questions, do a critical evaluation of your own morals and limits, and if you can, support. First, ask the individual or organization you would like to come alongside if A, you or your organization can offer yourselves as an ally. B, what are their needs or goals? And C, what concrete types of support do they need? If you receive an affirmative answer on the question of allyship and information about the organization's aims and needs, move on to assessing yourself. Are you in alignment? What support is needed? And in what ways can you provide it? For example, you might reach out to an organization that seeks to increase the number of Black American teens in STEAM fields: science, technology, engineering, architecture, and medicine, and ask if you can work with them. What are their goals and methods? And if you have something to share that can assist them in achieving that goal. Love. Good allies have love and a healthy respect for the people they work alongside. Cultivate genuine relationships, plural, with Black Americans already in your circle, at work, in church, at the Y, on the sidelines of your kid's soccer game, and while you volunteer. And do it just for the sake of doing it. If there are no Black Americans in your circle, you might ask yourself why, and if there are ways that you can remedy this. Leave room for error. Ally and advocacy work is a journey. As on all journeys, there will be progress as well as setbacks and mistakes. Allies, give yourself some grace by leaving yourself some room to mess up. When you mess up, apologize, learn, and recommit yourself to the worthwhile work that you are doing. And finally, live it out. In other words, do the work and do it on a regular basis in all spheres of life. Allyship with the Black American community is not just for February or just for the workplace. It is for March, April, May, etc. And appropriate and needed on the nonprofit executive board, at the Chamber of Commerce, at the meeting of the church elders, when hiring someone to fulfill a position, and as the cheerleading squad makes decisions about hair and makeup. Now I'd like to share with you an example of what allyship looks like from my own personal life. In January and February of 2020, I taught an 8-week course at my local church called His Love, Our Heritage, which combined the disciplines of history and prayer. In celebration of Black History Month, each week we explored a different topic in African American history and prayed a prayer of forgiveness and for healing and justice. While the body in which I am a member and serve is predominantly Black, the course was open to the local community, and I was pleased to see a white American mom from what I later learned was a predominantly white church congregation who was homeschooling her 4 children bring her oldest son to class each week. She had a degree in history, and from our class chats during and after class, we formed a genuine relationship. Her husband is a deacon in her church, and since that time, she, her husband, and members of their body have sought to come alongside my church as allies in the struggle for equitable treatment for African Americans. As a predominantly Black church and a white church, our churches now fellowship together. We engage in important and imperfect book-based discussions on race in the American church, and their church has come alongside ours on important, long-standing work we have been doing in Black and other marginalized communities. They have embraced many of the L's of allyship. But of course, in the fight for equity for Black Americans, allies are not just white. Let's also talk about how 2 marginalized groups can be allies of one another. I'd like to do so by talking with Daisy Moran of the Two Rivers YMCA about the ways in which members of the Latin community can be allies of Black Americans.
I think that one of the ways Black and Brown Americans can work together in this area is by starting off with the understanding of how our struggles are similar while still noting their differences, and how colonialism created racial trauma for both Black and Brown Americans.
When we think about the question of colonialism, we can think about the creation of systems where those of European ancestry were granted more power and privilege than those of African, indigenous, or mixed race ancestry. In the United States, of course, we can take this back to the founding of the Virginia colony. However, when we think about the broader United States, for example, Texas, we can think about both Jim and Juan Crow in the U.S. South and Southwest. For example, it would not have been uncommon to see signs that said no blacks, no Mexicans, and no dogs allowed. In addition, we can also think about lynching. While many people are aware of the lynchings of African Americans, few know about the lynchings of Mexican and Mexican Americans in the U.S. Southwest.
How does that manifest as anti-Blackness within the communities of color today?
So we can think about this in a number of ways. Today, I will share two. First, we can think about the idea of whitening the race in the Latin community versus the idea of Black affirmation. For example, sometimes you may hear the phrase mejorar la raza in the Latin American community. This phrase has to do with the idea of supposedly improving the race. And by improving the race, those who are speaking often mean by choosing to not marry or to associate with African Americans. Second, we can think about the phenomenon of colorism. In general, colorism has to do with the ways in which those who have darker skin are negatively treated by members of their own in-group. So, for example, we might think about the ways in which darker skin, African Americans and Latin Americans and Latinos are treated. So now that we've talked about those things, Daisy, I'd like to ask you, and maybe we can talk together. What do you think the future of Black-Brown solidarity might look like?
I believe one of the first steps is acknowledging the white privilege that Latinos have in our community and how we can use our privileges to uplift the voices of Afro-Latinos and Black Latinos in our communities. The next one would be acknowledging the English and Spanish words that are anti-Blackness. Many of us in Spanish-speaking communities know the words that are harmful and derogatory, yet we still use them and are common in our language and vocabulary. It's time that we call these out, become allies, and educate those around us on why language is important and how it's harmful to those around us. Let's also think about how the terms and perspectives such as "I don't see color" are damaging and invalidating to the experiences of people of color, African Americans, and Afro-Latinos. It's vital that the Latino community do the research and realize the ways in which they can contribute to racism against the Black American community. Instead, we should remember our common struggles and come alongside them in the fight for justice and equity.
Thank you for taking the time to learn about allyship with the Black American community and for being willing to commit yourself to do the work.